Imagine England in the year 1016, a land ravaged by decades of Viking invasions, its fields soaked with blood, its villages smoldering from raids, and its throne up for grabs. Two men stood on opposite sides of a crumbling kingdom, both claiming the right to rule. One was the last desperate hope of the ancient Anglo-Saxon line, Edmund Ironside, son of the legendary Ethelred the Unready. The other, a calculating and relentless Norse conqueror, Cnut the Great, son of King Sweyn Forkbeard. Their fates would collide in a series of brutal battles that would shape the very soul of England. This is not just a story of kings. It's a saga of betrayal, of resilience, and of a duel that determined the future of an entire nation. The crown was not handed down. It was fought for, inch by bloody inch. Welcome to the final struggle for England. Edmund Ironside versus Cnut the Great. The road to war. To understand the clash between Edmund Ironside and Cnut the Great, we must first step back into the decaying twilight of the Anglo-Saxon kingdom. Ethelred the Unready, Edmund's father, had been king for nearly 4 decades, a reign marked not by peace or prosperity, but by weakness and indecision. The epithet, unready, is a mistranslation of the Old English unread, meaning poor counsel, and poor counsel it was. Ethelred's policy of paying off Viking raiders through the infamous Danegeld only emboldened the invaders. As historian Simon Keynes remarks in the Oxford Illustrated History of the Vikings, the English crown, in effect, funded its own destruction. In 1013, the Danish king Sweyn Forkbeard launched a full-scale invasion. His campaign was swift and decisive, culminating in Ethelred's exile and Sweyn's proclamation as King of England. But fate had other plans. Just weeks into his reign, Sweyn died unexpectedly, an event that reopened the gates of chaos. Enter Cnut, Sweyn's young but ambitious son. Barely in his early 20s, Cnut sought to seize the moment and reclaim his father's legacy. But he was not the only one with eyes on the throne. Edmund Ironside, fierce, battle-hardened, and burning with the will to resist, rose in open rebellion against his own father as policy of appeasement and rallied the remnants of the Anglo-Saxon nobility. As Frank Stenton writes in Anglo-Saxon England, Edmund Ironside embodied the last defiant stand of a kingdom besieged. The duel begins. The year 1016 erupted into civil war. England was carved in two, the north, where the Danes held sway, and the south, where Edmund rallied English resistance. The two forces clashed again and again, each encounter more desperate than the last. One of the earliest confrontations occurred at Penselwood in Somerset, where Edmund met the Danish army head-on. Though the details are sparse, the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle describes it as a fierce and bloody engagement with no decisive victor. But Edmund was relentless. He fought at Schurston, then Brentford, driving the Danes back. Historian Michael Wood describes these campaigns as a frantic effort by a young warrior prince to reclaim a legacy on the edge of extinction. Cnut, in contrast, was patient. He consolidated his power base, secured support from Norse allies, and moved strategically across the kingdom like a chess master, anticipating his opponent's every move. The climax came at the Battle of Assandun in October 1016, a pivotal moment that would decide the fate of England. Unlike previous encounters, this battle was total. Both armies were at full strength. Both leaders were determined to end it, and both were aware that only one would leave with a kingdom. According to the Encomium Emmae Reginae, an early 11th century text written to glorify Queen Emma, Cnut's wife, the Danes struck with devastating discipline and ferocity. A betrayal by Edric Streona, an English noble who had long played both sides, sealed Edmund's fate. Streona withdrew his forces at a critical moment, tipping the scales in favor of Cnut. Edmund's army was shattered. England once again stood on the edge of foreign domination. Before we dive into the dramatic conclusion of this clash of titans, take a moment to subscribe to Vertex of Time. Here, history isn't just recited, it's brought to life. If you're passionate about the untold stories of forgotten kings, bloody duels, and power struggles that shaped the world, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Support our journey into the past and help us grow a community of history lovers who crave depth, drama, and detail. Now, let's return to the final chapter of this legendary duel, where one man would win the crown and the other would fade into legend. Aftermath. Honor and tragedy. Despite his devastating loss at Assandun, Edmund Ironside did not surrender. Instead, he negotiated a partition of the kingdom. Cnut would rule the north, Edmund would retain Wessex. It was a pragmatic solution, a truce between two warriors who had earned each other's respect on the battlefield, yet fate once again intervened. Just weeks after the agreement, Edmund Ironside died under mysterious circumstances. Some sources suggest illness, while others, like the Chronicle of John of Worcester, hint at assassination, possibly orchestrated by Cnut's allies or even by Edric Streona, who had already betrayed Edmund once before. With Edmund dead, Cnut moved swiftly to consolidate power. He exiled or executed rival claimants, married Queen Emma, Ethelred's widow, and adopted the image of a Christian king ruling by divine right. Historian Timothy Bolton in Cnut the Great emphasizes how effectively Cnut transformed from Viking warlord to imperial monarch, using both brutality and piety as tools of statecraft. Cnut's reign marked the beginning of a new era. Though he was a foreign conqueror, he ruled with surprising sophistication. He respected English customs, maintained the existing legal system, and promoted the church. His empire stretched from England to Denmark, and even into parts of Norway and Sweden, a true North Sea empire. But the memory of Edmund Ironside lingered like a ghost. For many Anglo-Saxons, he remained the symbol of a defiant England, a warrior king who fought to the bitter end. Legacy of a duel. The duel between Edmund Ironside and Cnut the Great was more than a mere succession crisis. It was the last great chapter of the Viking Age in England. It represented the collision of two worlds, the dying embers of Anglo-Saxon independence and the relentless tide of Scandinavian ambition. What makes this conflict so compelling is not just its drama, but its depth. Unlike many medieval wars, this was not a black-and-white tale of good versus evil. Edmund was no perfect hero, and Cnut was no simple villain. In many ways, both men were shaped by the world around them. Edmund was forged in fire, raised in a kingdom on the brink, taught to lead not by choice, but by necessity. He was a warrior of raw courage, unwilling to bow even in the face of overwhelming odds. Cnut, on the other hand, was the product of a brutal Viking tradition, but also a visionary ruler who adapted to his new realm with shrewd intelligence. Their duel altered England forever. Had Edmund won at Assandun, the Anglo-Saxon dynasty might have survived a generation longer. The Norman conquest of 1066 might never have happened. But with Cnut's victory came a new vision, one that blended Viking audacity with English stability. Today, the names of these kings have largely faded from popular memory. But their story, etched in blood and sealed by fate, remains one of the most riveting episodes in medieval history. As historian Ian Howard notes in Cnut, England's Viking King, the battle between Edmund and Cnut was not simply for territory, but for the soul of a kingdom. So next time you think of England's great monarchs, remember the ones who fought for it with swords drawn and destinies entwined, Edmund Ironside and Cnut the Great. Their clash was more than a war. It was a reckoning.